Hello, everybody. Welcome to the county seat today. I'm your host, Chad Booth. You know, the legislative session is, well, it's just right around the corner. And I have a calendar watch on. And we are going to talk about some of the upcoming legislative issues that will be affecting counties and the general public a little bit larger. Our strategy team, the guys that are doing the hits, miss, runs, and plays, the color coverage, from the Utah Association of Counties, Lincoln Shurtz, the Director of Governmental Affairs, the Executive Director, CEO, and Big Honcho, Adam Trupp. Guys, thank you for joining us today for the county seat.
Thank you, Chad.
So, all right, gavel drops on the legislature. What's going to be the big issue?
First issue, hide your wives and your children. The legislature's in session. It's 45 days that the legislature's in session. Constitutionally, they have 45 days, which is about 33 working days. That they'll be running through approximately 1,000 pieces of legislation and balancing a $13 billion budget. So it is a sprint over those 33 working days, and a lot of areas and a lot of issues to cover.
I noticed both of you are about 15 pounds lighter at the end of the session than you are going in.
We eat a lot worse.
So what do you think is one of the key issues that you have to be dealing with for this year?
Well, one of the big issues is obviously the budget. As I mentioned, a $13 billion budget, that seems to dominate a good portion of the session. Obviously, counties, as service providers on behalf of the state of Utah, have a very active role in the budget process and things that we have to do in order to carry out the mission of the state and local governments, whether it be healthcare services, indigent event services, medical services, Meals on Wheels. All those sorts of programs are things that counties are intimately involved in and seek funding through the state legislature. So those are going to be some big funding issues that we'll be dealing with this year.
So last year we did the Reinvestment in Justice Act, and there was provisional funding because we didn't know what was going to go on with Medicaid expansion or the Healthy Utah plan. Is that going to come up again? Is the funding a problem?
The funding is a problem simply because the problem itself and the solution that they're trying to achieve is so large. We anticipate that will continue to be a discussion. That's something that will be worked on, will be in front of the legislature for the entire session. But a big question is exactly what's the impact of justice reinvestment? What is going to be the actual cost to make this happen? You got to remember, this really only started last July as far as when things went into place, and then there were a lot of portions that really were delayed for a longer period of time while we all tried to figure out how we put something into place that was a brand new creation and how we modified what we were doing. So we have a very short track record to find out what we need to do next, but we know there's certainly more to develop.
Are the counties feeling some heat from it? Are they going, whoa, this isn't quite what we expected yet? Or?
Well, as Adam just mentioned, it just went into effect, and so the viewers understand kind of what that means is they just implemented sentencing reform in the justice system. And what sentencing reform essentially did is it took low-level nonviolent drug offenses from felonies down to misdemeanors. When you do that, that has a significant or potential significant impact on the county jails because they're no longer going to state prison, but rather going to the county jail in order to seek treatment and also be rehabilitated back into society. So with that shift in who has responsibility for seeing these folks, obviously that shift is borne predominantly by counties. We will be seeking funding on this issue as well as resources to make sure that we're also dealing with probation services, treatment services, and a whole host of other things that come along with dealing with folks who have substance abuse disorders and issues of that nature.
And I'd add one of the things that we're finding, the concerns that come from law enforcement side, from prosecutors, and from even the folks in treatment side on this issue is we're trying to find the right people who are ready to get into treatment and into recovery, and to keep those people from going to jail or from going to prison and get them into a place where they're actually on the way to recovery. But it's not an easy thing. They don't have tags on the back of their neck to say this person's ready and we're ready to go with this. So as we continue to work on this and develop it, the real issue is trying to find out what we're doing right, what we need to do better, and then go from there. And to be honest, that takes time and money and a lot of education. So
another big issue Salt Lake County is working on that dovetails into this as well, and we've heard a lot about it in the press recently, is the homelessness issue. Obviously, you can imagine that homelessness issues correlate very directly with substance abuse disorder as well as mental illness. And so as those two issues kind of intertwine themselves with homelessness, you're going to see a huge push for additional homelessness services as well as resources to look at ways in which we can better handle that population as well.
Excellent. This is a great place to take a break. We're off to a rolling start. We'll be right back with our pregame show of the Utah State Legislature here on the county seat. We'll be back in just a minute.
There's a little place on a Utah map, where I was raised, where my heart's at, where the sagebrush grows wild and high, and the stars come out at night. Oh, there ain't nothing like being raised in the basin with a Ute reservation, skiing starvation, that Duchesne County life.
149 million years in the making, dinosaurs once roamed this land. Now they're found at the Dinosaur National Monument. Let's take you beyond the bones. We call it Dinosaur Land. You'll find it offers adventures and sights not seen anywhere else in the world. Come to Dinosaur Land, Vernal, Utah. You'll want to stay forever. The dinosaurs did.
How would you like a menu with over 400 fine dining options? Then come to Davis County, where dining goes beyond ordinary takeout. With over 400 restaurants, the possibilities for a special dining experience are endless. From sautéed ribeye or authentic sushi to gourmet sandwiches and salads, it's the perfect time to escape the kitchen. See a complete list of dining options by visiting playindavis.com and plan your next night out.
The weekends just never feel like they're long enough. By the time you get to a destination, you're worn out and you may need a vacation to recover from your last vacation. The solution is closer than you think, and that's just what you need. You can find the desert at Little Sahara, the cool refreshment of Yuba Lake, escape to the green of the forest on the Nebo Loop. Make your escape to Juab County. It'll change your family forever.
Welcome back to the county seat. We are having a discussion today about things that will most likely become conversations during the legislature. We're trying to keep it so that we don't get lost in a fog about some really complicated issues, but we want to keep the ball rolling. And I really don't know a good segue, because we were talking about substance abuse in the last segment, but medical marijuana is going to come up again. But this is really a very serious issue. What gives with that as far as the perspective of UAC?
For those who have been paying attention, there was a bill last year that nearly passed out of the Senate, failed by one vote, that would have allowed for kind of full-scale medical marijuana, meaning everything from smoking it to edibles to all sorts of distribution methodology, if you will. That bill is coming back under Senator Mark Madsen again this year. There is a competing proposal coming from Representative Daw of Utah County, as well as Senator Evan Vickers from Iron County as well. And what that one does is essentially allow for CBD oil, which is a cannabis-based oil but low THC, so that they can address some of the health concerns that have been brought forward by the public, such as epilepsy and some of the major issues that you've seen some mothers and others come out on. They're trying to address that without necessarily going full-scale medical marijuana, which would allow for the smoking and edible forms of marijuana.
So when you separate the two, the indications of using it are different. The one element, the oil, is used in controlling some other things other than the mind. Is that a safe way to?
Non-THC is probably the best indicator between the two proposals. The CBD has very little to no recognizable THC, so you don't get high, if you will, versus full medical, there is the component that has mind-altering
Does it have a huge
chemicals.
impact on counties?
Huge impact on the substance abuse issue. We certainly have local mental health authorities that are concerned about the potential substance abuse effects associated with the gateway drug type mentality around marijuana. And as we've seen in other states, there's also concerns that medical marijuana slowly morphs into recreational marijuana. So lots of concerns about that issue as well. And a lot of stuff to talk about. Certainly two competing proposals will make for an interesting session.
Indigent defense. Now this is something that we've talked about before, and probably it feels like we've talked about it way too much, but viewers at home have had a lot of other things to occupy their time. Is this still a problem across the state? We didn't really get much done on it last year, right?
We did not, and didn't approach it too fully last year. It was more of a discussion about what needs are out there, what people are finding, and what some of the options are, but it was not anything that we went into trying to resolve really through legislation. We're looking at that now because the issue keeps bubbling up and keeps raising questions for people, and it's a difficult issue to resolve, really. The counties are putting a substantial amount of money into funding this, around $25 to $30 million a year, to fund criminal defense for indigent defendants, and the state is not putting any substantial money in at all. In fact, they have no commitment financially to support those services. So the question is, if we're going to increase services, if we're going to set some new expectations, if we're going to increase standards or expectations, who should pay for that? How should we deal with that? Where should that money come from? And really, how are we going to define the standards as we go forward?
And this is even a bigger issue in the rural counties, to the fact that they almost, you know, in the Old West you had circuit judges, and they almost have to pool their resources for circuit defenders to kind of wander around some of the counties. Is that a correct statement?
That is. Yes, it is, but it's a little different version. What we find, I think, is we've got public defenders who work in a lot of different areas. They may work in juvenile defense or adult criminal defense, and then they do their other work too on their own to try to make a living in a rural community. And there are not a lot of lawyers looking for contracts with the city or the county in a lot of those areas. So the resolution, how we get something improved, how we get more people into the business is something that's a lot easier to deal with in the Wasatch Front counties than it is off the Wasatch Front counties, and that's not even dealing with the issue of available money in the county to fund those things. So we've got a lot of questions to ask, a lot of questions to discuss, and not a lot of real good answers.
Well, the pressure point on this is there have been other states where there have been lawsuits filed by the ACLU and others stating that the state is not meeting its Sixth Amendment obligation to provide adequate indigent defense. So that's really the pressure point. The state's facing the same thing. There have been really not even veiled threats, but threats that if they don't do something, similar lawsuits will be coming to the state of Utah as well. So you've got a lot of pressure building on this issue to say we need to come up with an alternative way or some additional measures to see how we're doing in terms of meeting that obligation.
Well, like some of the jail funding issues, the state's been very successful in some cases of transferring that financial obligation directly to the counties via either underfunding or not funding at all, depending upon certain members of the legislature and their points of view. But could the counties end up being the recipient of some of this legal action if the state fails to do this?
In fact, we could. The responsibility is delegated to the counties by the state, and so we have a responsibility. But on the other hand, we can turn back around the other direction, make the point that we're simply taking on a responsibility for the state, and as a result, they're really the body responsible. We're all, I think, hoping we don't face a lawsuit, but that we can come up with some solutions that keep that away and keep making improvements. But we'll have to see where that goes. We're certainly not wanting to take on more burdens and more cost for the counties without a strong partnership and buy-in from the state too. So we'll hope it goes the right direction.
Well, I have not heard any like shoes hitting the screens from the TV sets at home. So let's start on an issue that probably will get some people throwing things at the set. Let's talk about Senate Bill 54, the caucus versus primary and signature systems. Are we at peace with that finally?
Yeah, peace is certainly not the word that can be used in this conversation.
Depends upon how you spell it,
yeah,
right?
Exactly. Lots of discussion still taking place. I think what you can boil it down to at this point is you do have members of both caucuses, both Republicans and Democrats, who are actively gathering signatures right now. Some candidates have already successfully gathered the requisite number of signatures to get on the ballot, and that varies based on the office that they're seeking. But there's no peace within the parties, if you will. There are still many who think that the caucus system is the way that you should go, and there are others that believe there should be a dual path to the ballot, meaning that you can either gather signatures to get directly to a primary ballot or go through the caucus system. What will be interesting is the impact that has on legislative discussions. If a member of the legislature knows that someone can gather 1,000 signatures and challenge them without having to go through the caucus system, that's certainly going to have an impact on the discussion at the legislature. Responsiveness back to the citizenry and their district, I think, will be an interesting dynamic to watch during this session in particular, as it's the first one where really there's this threat that someone can come outside of the caucus system and challenge someone for that seat. Most
people that I have talked to about this think that this is a state issue. They think it's a governor issue. They think it's an attorney general issue. And that's about it, because they don't ever actually think about the other state offices. But this is a county issue as well.
It is indeed. It's if you're running for a partisan office, whether you're running as a Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, or any other, this applies to you in those partisan offices. So it doesn't necessarily apply to municipal city offices, but certainly county officials who run as Republicans and Democrats and the like. This is going to have an impact.
Well, the munis have been doing the petitions for a long time anyway, in many cases, because I remember twice in my unsuccessful bids, I just had to get signatures.
Absolutely.
And if a 19-year-old kid can run, I guess anybody can run. So should it be one way or the other? Or do you think you can live in a world of both?
Yeah, there's a question as to what it means to be a part of the party. And if you don't go through the party system, are you really a part of that party? I think that's where we're boiling down the discussion. And there are people on all sides of that discussion as to whether or not you can run outside of the party system and still be a part of that party. So, very heated discussion. From our standpoint, certainly looking at the impact it's going to have on the discussion within the legislature on policy issues.
And I think a key piece is to remember that, in fact, all the county offices, all the county elected offices are partisan. They run and as partisan positions. So it affects all of us throughout, affects all the counties across the state. So.
Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break. Wait, I'm listening. We'll give you a shoe count on our return. We'll be back with the county seat in just a minute.
Kanab, base camp for your southern Utah adventures. You belong in Kanab.
What would you do with an extra day in Utah Valley? Explore the Wasatch Mountains? Snap a family photo at Bridal Veil Falls. Cool off on Utah Lake or the Provo River. No matter what you're searching for, you can find it in Utah Valley. Bring everyone together.
I'm a Utah's own dairy producer. I care about the health of my animals, and I care about the quality of food we produce.
Because when it comes to providing quality dairy products,
I understand the importance of Utah grown and raised.
And the jobs we enjoy are vital, because Utah's Own supports our communities.
As a consumer, I look for Utah's Own products, because Utah's Own is good for me, and it's good for Utah.
Keeping it here at home, Utah's Own.
Let's be honest, you don't know much about Beaver County. Well, let me tell you about it. It's the birthplace of outlaw Butch Cassidy and inventor Philo T. Farnsworth. Some of the best skiing in Utah is at Eagle Point. You've got camping, Canyon Breeze Golf Course, Crusher and the Tushers Beaver Territorial Courthouse, snowmobiling, renewable energy, Pioneer Car Show, Squeaky Cheese, ghost towns to explore, best water in the country, Paiute ATV trails, Old Frisco Kilns, horse races, hunting, fishing, and it's a good place to live. Beaver County, mountains of fun. I could tell you more, but why don't you come and see it for yourself?
Welcome back to the county seat. Just as a side note, we did do a shoe count. 16 shoes hit the TV sets across the state, but unfortunately, we don't know which side they fell on, so this argument's still up in the air. Okay, sales tax is always a big issue. It's one of the main money drivers for counties. There are a lot of mortar and brick stores that for years have complained about internet sales tax. And I know some states, if you go online, some states you're collected for and others you're not. So is that going to become an issue that comes back up?
It is going to become an issue this year. A couple of things just to give some background so everyone understands how they determine whether or not you owe sales tax. There's a legal theory called nexus, which means if a store has a physical location or nexus in the state of Utah, then they're required to pay sales tax to the state of Utah on any sort of purchase that is where sales tax is applicable. There has been ongoing discussion of what the term nexus actually means, especially with the emergence of the internet and more people shopping online. Is there such a thing as economic nexus? Meaning that if you're selling so much into a state, even though you may not have a physical presence in the state, is there still an economic nexus to that state, and should they have some obligation to collect the sales tax and remit that back to the state of Utah and its political subdivisions, counties, and cities? There was a case that went up to the U.S. Supreme Court coming out of Colorado and out of New York, where there was an opinion issued that said there may be an issue dealing with economic nexus. And if there is, maybe there's ways in which you can craft the laws to create nexus provisions. So we do know there's at least one piece of legislation that's coming that will essentially say there is this term of economic nexus, and if someone sells so much into the state of Utah, that vendor will have to collect sales tax from its patrons and remit that back to the state of Utah. The impact on the eBays and the Amazons and all of the internet providers is significant. Where it's not going to be significant is if you buy something from Nordstrom's or Sears. When it already has nexus in the state, you're already collecting and paying sales tax there. But all those other vendors where you may not be, there is a question as to whether or not this bill would apply.
So like on an eBay, would that be the individual seller or would that be eBay itself?
Well, eBay is a little bit of a hybrid, and so it gets a little bit convoluted. And the reason eBay is a hybrid is because you have the individual sellers, you or me, but you also have retailers that are providing through there as well. So again, creating that economic threshold of what constitutes nexus will be a dicey proposition, but something that they're going to be taking up.
It almost looks like a state-by-state tariff issue, and they're charging a tariff on out-of-state people for doing business. Has that ever come up in a discussion?
So you have the Quill decision that kind of talked about that, as well as this notion of interstate commerce and freedom of interstate commerce, which gets to your point as well. It's part of the discussion. I will say anything we pass in Utah will get litigated. It will be going up through the court system. So what they're trying to do is craft the perfect bill for the perfect circumstance to have something that they hope can be successfully litigated federally. I know that's a terrible proposition, but there's such a lack in faith in Congress actually acting and doing something on this issue that you're now having many states, largely working through NCSL, which is a national conference of state legislatures, to look at these sorts of issues. Should be noted, Senator Kurt Bramble is the current president of the National Conference of State Legislators, so has been very actively involved in this federally and will likely be bringing some of that knowledge and input back to the state of Utah for this discussion.
Have any of the counties that we deal with in UAC or within our show, have you ever heard them talk about what they estimate their local sales tax revenue is that's been lost by not being able to collect this tax?
I have.
It's a huge number. A report just before Christmas estimated that 20% of all sales over the Christmas holiday season, if you will, were internet-based sales, which means the state in large part isn't collecting any of that sales tax on those purchases. So if you assume you're losing 20% of your tax base just based on where you're buying goods, it's a significant issue to states and local governments. The last piece here, because it always gets convoluted, this isn't a new tax. I know most viewers don't realize it, but on your tax form at the end of the year, you're actually supposed to pay your use tax. Most of us just don't file anything there, but technically speaking, we're all supposed to be filing how much we bought on the internet and paying the use tax on that amount.
I feel so guilty right now.
There's about 6 people who do it, and they all sit on the tax commission.
Okay, we're going to use that before. Now we're going to get phone calls from the tax commission. Okay, we're going to take a commercial break right now. When we come back, we'll do our wrap up with the legislative session and our friends from UAC. We'll be right back.
Tucked away just outside of Cedar City, Utah, are 2 of southern Utah's best-kept secrets, Canaraville Falls and Kolob Canyons. The rare scenic views create beautiful backdrops to capture the perfect selfie. Get your selfie to Canaraville Falls or Kolob Canyons and get in on one of Utah's best-kept secrets. Go to visitcedarcity.com and access your adventure.
There is a place where looking out means looking in, where an impression lasting only a few seconds will be imprinted on a life forever, where courage is forged and innocence rediscovered, where remembering is rewarding and forgetting unforgettable. There is a place where truth is felt and where seeing is believing. There is a place.
The Utah Farm Bureau has always been there to fight for the needs of its members, with discount programs on items ranging from vehicles and ATVs to health and wellness. The membership fees aren't big, but the results are. We've been around since 1916, and we're not leaving anytime soon. Utah Farm Bureau. We work for those who work to feed the world.
The State of Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration, SITLA, manages 3.5 million acres of Utah lands with the express purpose of providing financial support to further the education of Utah's students. while promoting local industry, oil and gas, even residential development, all at the same time. Through the careful use of trust lands, the School Land Trust Program will distribute nearly $37 million to Utah schools this year. The State of Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration, building the state's permanent school fund.
Welcome back to the county seat. We're wrapping up our conversation about the upcoming legislative session. Now, there's a certain audience that watches this program, the people who tend to be a little bit engaged. And if you want to be more engaged than just tuning into the county seat or Inside Utah Politics or This Week with George Stephanopoulos, and you want to really follow what's happening in real time, that's fairly easy to do, is it not?
I just read the stuff that Lincoln writes, pretty much. And now I feel like I'm on top of all it, but I know there's other things you can do too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the state is a very open and kind of transparent in the way in which it does business. The best place is honestly through the website to get most familiar with when they're having committee meetings and where those are being held. You can find that at le.utah.gov. That's the homepage for the legislature. You can follow committee meetings online so that you don't have to drive up to the Capitol and fight the crowds, or certainly come up to the Capitol. It is probably one of the most accessible and open to the public capitals that I've ever experienced throughout the country. Very easy to get into, very easy to find your way around. They have folks sitting at all of the front doors to kind of guide you to where you may be looking for a committee meeting. So I would encourage folks to get involved in the process. It's an important thing.
If they start looking at bills, are there usually summaries with them that are on the website so that, you know, if you focus and concentrate, pretty much anybody can get the gist?
Yeah, so if you go onto the main website, there's a calendar section so you can see which committees are meeting. And then on there, it will show you which bills will be considered in those committees. It gives you a bill number as well as a bill title. You click on that, and it will give you a synopsis both in the short title of what that bill does in layman's terms, and then it gives you the actual bill text as well. So all of that stuff is available about 3 clicks away.
Okay, let's talk about UAC, because I know you guys put out that's how I stay informed, as I listen to what you guys are doing.
We do. We have a team that's up there every day, basically working 6 days a week, and sometimes more depending on the need, but working consistently on a huge number of bills, providing summaries, doing summaries. We do a great deal of posting of information on our website during the session to keep people up to date on what we're tracking, what's going on there.
And that website is?
That's
UACnet.
Yes.
Okay.
.org.
USCnet.org. There you go, folks. Any last words? We've got about 30 seconds.
I would just guess I would add that it's a really enjoyable time of year, but it's really stressful for us. A lot of work done too. But the thing that is amazing is we participate in year after year is the number of people there who are really working hard to try to get something improved or make some change that they think is necessary. It's a lot of good work being done, a lot of time that it isn't really good work or too productive, but we're all there trying to figure out how to make things better, I think, in a lot of ways. So.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for allowing us into your home each week here on the county seat. We invite you to check out our social media as a way to kind of stay up on things, and watch the show again, share it with your friends, and remember, local government is where your life happens. Be involved, be part of the process, and look for these guys up at the legislature. We'll see you next week. If you'd like to share this video with your friends, well, you do that right here. If you would like to subscribe to our YouTube channel, you do that over here. If you'd like to interact with us on the county seat, that happens over here. If you want to watch the next episode of the county seat, you can catch it Saturday night at 11 or Sunday morning at 8:30 on ABC4 Good for Utah.